Me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first.
I have a ghost story that I'm not even sure that I believe myself because I'm very logical and it makes no sense. So I grew up in a town in Ohio in a house that was built in the late 60s. The house itself never experienced a death. However, I feel like whatever they built the house on was its own sort of like energy vortex, and it attracted a low level demon to it. Now, I want to preface this and say if you are afraid of any like demonic stories or anything like that, please do not watch this video. You'll find out why. So we moved into the house when I was about 4 years old-ish, and immediately I started experiencing activity. The one thing that I remember the most was I had this reoccurring dream about a woman. And in the dream, I can still remember, I would go to my door, like the front door of my house. I would look out into our driveway, and we had a pretty long driveway because the house sat back from the road and it was all gravel. And she would just be standing out in the gravel. And this was years and years before anything like The Ring, like The Grudge. I was born in 1990, so this is literally 1994, 1995. And I would look out and I would see this woman who I just described as having like jet black hair. She's wearing like a white dress, and she's just standing there like almost like floating, like ethereal. And I would point at her and my mom would be behind me and I'd be, "Mommy, who's that?" And as soon as I would say that, she would immediately like shift, change. She would look like a corpse, like demented, bloody. This just almost like the only way that I could equate it later on in like my teens was to like Samara or something from The Ring. Anyway, in the dream, she would come into the house, she would kill my mom, I would go and hide in my bedroom closet, and I would hide in my bedroom closet until I would look to the side and I would see a little girl ghost sitting there. She was also a real ghost. Someone else saw her in my house besides me, but that's beyond the point. So I'd see the little girl ghost in the dream, get freaked out, run to my dad. The evil lady would kill my dad, and then I would go down and run into the basement where she would corner me. And that happened over and over and over and over until I was 15 years old. The only reason that those dreams stopped is because I literally lucid dream, and in the lucid dream I just turned around to the entity and I'm just like, "I'm so tired of this. I'm tired of having this nightmare. I'm not afraid of you. Can you just stop so I can get some sleep?" And it worked. Fast forward, where this gets even more unbelievable. Like, I have tons of ghost stories about her. I have ghost stories about the little girl in my closet with the sharp teeth, but someone else said that they looked like braces that had been pulled off her teeth. I have stories about the shadow man in my house. I have stories about the guy with cowboy boots. Like, there's tons of stories about that house, but they're all connected to that demonic entity. I'm in my 20s. I'm sitting at a friend's house, not really acquainted with the person anymore, but I'm sitting at her house and her other friend is there. All three of us are at the kitchen table. The first friend, who we'll just call Becky, has her phone sitting in front of her. And then the other friend, Jessica, her phone is on charge sitting on the kitchen counter. We are the only people in the house. So I'm telling Becky and Jessica this story. And then Jessica's phone starts going absolutely insane. It's just like buzzing, text after text after text. So I kind of stopped talking to them about all of these ghost experiences. And she gets up and checks her phone because she's concerned at this point. It turns out her boyfriend was texting her. Now, we lived in Ohio. Her boyfriend was away in Arizona, like at school at this time. So he was not even with earshot. We're the only people in the house. I have eyes on Becky's phone. I had eyes on Jessica's phone. Her boyfriend's texting her, freaking out. He's someone apparently who is also kind of intuitive, that they told me later on, because this guy describes exactly to me, to us, in his texts, the entity from my house. I'm getting chills. So I just start asking questions. And the reason I start asking questions is because anytime I have had communications with this entity, it has a really strange way of speaking. It tries to give you half-truths and speak almost in riddles. So I was like, okay, maybe this is a prank, right? Don't know how it could be a prank. There's nobody else in the house. But they're getting freaked out. So I ask them to ask the boyfriend, "Hey, ask the name of this entity. Is it so-and-so?" Because the entity gave me a human name, to call it, and I don't know why, and I don't know if that's like the persona that it took on. And I will always remember that he literally responded with, "So and so is not here, but don't you fear, I will be near." And I'm just like, or something like, it was like a poem. And I was just like, oh my gosh, how in all of Hades and heaven did that thing contact him miles and miles and miles away? And that's why I said, if you guys are still here and you're listening to this story and you have any sort of fear, don't. It cannot hurt you. It feeds on fear, and apparently it has long ranges. But weak demon, sage, I don't really, personally believe in saging, but do what you do to kind of cleanse yourself. Just don't be afraid. Tell it you're not afraid and you're fine. But yeah, that's my completely unbelievable ghost story. I talked to them multiple times. Were you guys playing a joke on me? Were you playing a joke on me? Because it's possible, like, we had a group of friends. I could have told someone else the story, and then they told them to do a prank. They swear up and down they didn't to this day. So yeah, that's my ghost story. I left out the best part of the story. The first thing that the entity said to the boyfriend that was relayed through Jessica was that it's not nice to talk about people behind their backs. That is what freaked me out the most, because it was so cognizant that in the moment it knew that I was talking about it and then started playing with me and like doing its little riddle thing. The house that I grew up in has been torn down. Another house has been built on top of it. And one of the things that I made sure that I did is I made sure that she left prior to building that new home, because I knew that that new home had children. And I've not seen her. I don't know where she went, but she doesn't bother me much anymore. There's a couple times other than that event that I sensed her around me, and it's just, I think that I've gotten strong enough to just to be like, leave me alone. But I had to go back to the house once my dad passed away, before the house was torn down, for her to really start messing with me again. And I just remember I was laying in bed at my apartment in Ohio before I left, and she came to me in the dream. And I'm, again, going lucid, and I'm just screaming at her, like, you cannot be here. Leave. You need to leave. And my fiance at the time, who can also verify, he's here on TikTok, we're no longer together, but he was, like, trying to shake me awake, and he's like, you're screaming, you're yelling. And I'm lucid enough that, like, I'm still asleep, and I told him, I know, she's here. She needs to leave. And, like, I'm a really strange person. But that was the last time I saw that thing, was when I had a friend help me get it off of the land. And I hope that what he did worked, and that it is stuck and is not tormenting anyone else. Since I'm on the subject, I guess I'll make one kind of all-encompassing video about this demonic entity. So recapping what I've already said about it, the first time I ever saw it was when I was 5. And it started happening in these recurring dreams where she would do horrible things to my family. In the end of every dream, she would take me down to the basement where she would corner me, like I said, and then I would just wake up. The basement of my house felt like the epicenter of all of the activity. It was to the point where I would go downstairs and I would like run back up the stairs because like the energy was just so dense down there. What I feel like this entity was, it just, whatever reason, like I said, it was drawn to that energy that was in the land, whether it was like a ley line or a portal, whatever you believe in, it was there, and it was trapping others there. So I mentioned a few of the ghosts. There was a little girl, there was a guy that wore cowboy boots or like boots, and then there was a shadow person. And then there were other various strange things that happened around that house. But we'll focus on my demon. The first time I ever saw her outside of the dream and outside of getting like feelings of her being around. The first time I literally saw her, I was 9. So I had the master bedroom in my house. So I had like a queen size bed and I could look out into the hallway. And I just remember like waking up, sitting up and looking out into the hallway and just seeing her standing there in the hallway. And as soon as like we like locked eyes, she was gone. There are other various instances where I like catch things walking up and down the hallway or hearing things walking up and down the hallway, but I never like looked at her full on until years later when I had a friend come over. My friend had gotten a new digital camera and she was taking pictures in the house, and I just remembered taking a photo and seeing the outline of that entity in like her woman form looking at us. But when we went to upload the photo onto our computer, the photo was gone. So the next time outside of dreams that I remember physically seeing this entity was after the reoccurring nightmares stopped. I was 16 and I was, free minutes on your cell phone after 9 o'clock. So I was like chatting up with my boyfriend. And where I had the master bedroom in the house, I have a bathroom attached to the bedroom. And my bed was facing the bathroom. So I get out of bed because I'm done talking to my boyfriend and I'm like getting ready to go get something to drink and get ready for bed. And in the bathroom mirror, and only in the bathroom mirror, she walked across the bathroom. So I could see like her profile in the mirror only, but like not like she walked in front of my eyeballs. It was just in the mirror. It was the strangest thing. I don't know how to explain it other than she only manifested inside of the mirror and walked across the bathroom. The next time I can really think about I had anything, I moved out of the house at 19, and then I remember being 23, and this is going to sound really stupid. I kept seeing something like crawling on my floor. Now, I had cats, but it was different. It was just like this almost like black mist that was just like crawling around on my floor. And I was living in my own apartment at this time, and I'm just like, that's sus. Lo and behold, I had a dream that night. And what I really remember specifically about this dream, I was dreaming about Doctor Who. And all of a sudden, the dream just starts getting really weird, and I start becoming more and more aware, and I just start feeling like chills. And this ended up being a scene in Pitch Perfect that I think is funny, but this happened in my dream. This demonic entity dragged a chair into my dream and sat in it and watched me dreaming about Doctor Who. Like I'm literally inside the TARDIS and like David Tennant is the doctor, and literally watched me until I became lucid enough that I was able to communicate with her. And that was the dream that I'm just like, what are you doing here? I'm so tired of this again. Like, why are you back? We left this years ago. I'm not at the house. Who are you? What do you want? What's your name? And that's when it gave me the human name. And the way that it presented this human name to me was like in a signature. And I always read that you're not supposed to be able to read in your dreams, but I could read this signature. I don't think that is this entity's real name. But that's what it told me. This all, like, as I'm telling this, it just sounds so stupid and so non-believable, but I swear on my life, like, this happened to me. A few years later, that was the incident with the friends, and then fast forward, my father passes away. My dad and I didn't talk for 7 years, so I had not been inside of that house for 7 years. My father was not in his right mind right before he passed away, but I remember his girlfriend telling me that he started sleeping with a gun because he was so afraid, because he kept waking up and a woman would be leaning over him with a knife, to the point that he fired the gun and put a hole in the wall. I talked about the dream again with my fiance, the lucid dream, when that she followed me home and was in there. My fiance at the time was trying to wake me up. There was one day that my dad's girlfriend went back into the house and physically got pushed out of the house. There was another time that my fiance at the time, he went into the house and he felt something brush his back. Then there was me. I went in there with my eucalyptus and I was like, no, I'm done. You've pushed someone. Now you've touched someone. we're not playing this game anymore because I'm confronting the thing. And I end up getting it trapped into one specific room. And I'm like, you're not touching anybody. You're not doing this. You're not doing anything. Like, you stay in here. So for a while when we were going back to the house, everything felt fine. It felt okay. Now, I mentioned there were other spirits in the home, and I could always feel those other spirits. Those spirits started dwindling away. And the only thing that I can explain it as is there were no living souls to feed on in the house anymore because the house was sitting abandoned, that it started eating the dead that were there. Because when I went back into the room that I trapped it in, it was my bedroom, my old bedroom, I couldn't feel the little girl in there anymore. I think that that thing like devoured it somehow. So the house sits empty for a few weeks. I don't go in there. I'm not actively doing any sort of like cleansing. I go out there on a whim, just for funsies. I take my friend and her daughter, and I'm like, hey, you want to see a haunted house? So I go out there, and we're walking around, and the house, by the way, was completely trashed. It was condemned. That's why it was torn down. The house, they had to build a new house there when the people bought the land. So we go down into the basement with my friend and her daughter, and I said, oh, it's so creepy, but I haven't really felt anything yet. And then I can remember, and again, people were with me and they heard this. I just hear, oh, I haven't really felt anything yet. And then from the basement, I just hear like a laugh, exactly like that. Like mocking as all get out. And yeah, that was when I finally decided, like, I knew I was selling the house, and I'm like, there are children going to be here. So I started looking at ways to get it out. And I eventually had a friend who does, you know, some sort of like shamanic work, who came out, and what he said he was trying to do was to get it into an object so that he could remove the object from the home. I let him do what he did. I don't know what he did. That's kind of outside of my scope. But again, I have not had any contact with this entity since then. This is a really long video. Wow. It's me again with another ghost story to tell everyone. Today I feel like I'm going to tell a positive ghost story. It's not going to be one that is super scary, just a little weird, that deals with our loved ones and what happens kind of when they pass on, or just dealing with that topic. So once upon a time, I made a new friend, which for me is a huge feat, but I made a new friend and I was hanging out at her house. She had one of those couches that was kind of like an L-shaped sectional, and in between the two pieces of the sectional, there was a console area where she kept this box. The box wasn't anything creepy on its own. It just was a wooden box, like a jewelry box type thing, just for storage, right? But this box had an energy to it that I don't know. It had feelings. It was weird. It was strange, this box. Please ignore my hair. It's Florida. So I kept being drawn to the box. I'm like, what is this? Very strange, very weird, right? But I don't say anything because this is a brand new person that I've been hanging out with. She doesn't know me that well. She definitely doesn't know that I'm a weirdo. And I, in general, is someone that I don't think that likes to really mess with the paranormal in general. So one night I'm at her house and we're watching TV, and she ends up like running up to the store or something. Like, she's not there, I'm there alone. And I'm just kind of sitting watching TV, chilling, and then I'm like, nope, definitely not alone. There's a presence here. And it wasn't anything malicious at all. It was just kind of this like grandmotherly presence that was picking up that I could see it. I could sense it. And then the grandmother essentially just became very excited and was like, no, you have to tell her that I'm here. Like, you have to let her know that I'm around. I want her to know that she's safe. So I think nothing of it, right? That's me. I don't want to make my friend feel uncomfortable because she lives alone. Like, I don't know how she's gonna take it. But I ended up bringing it up a couple days later. We're driving, and I just asked her, like, hey, you know, who gave you that box? What's the story behind the wooden box on your couch? And she's like, oh, well, my mom gave that to me. And I was like, okay, that definitely doesn't match the weird vibes that I get from that, you know, with the ghosts that I sensed. But I went for it anyway. I said, well, do you have a grandmother that's passed away? And she's like, yeah, my dad's mom's gone. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm like, well, you know, she's around and she's attached to that box for some reason. Like, I thought maybe she had given that to you as like a memento to like, keep, you know, be in your life, keep you safe kind of thing. But she's definitely around and she just wants you to know that she loves you. The friend is silent because I'm like, oh no, now she hates me. I'm probably a freaking weirdo. I scared her. But she's just silent. She sits there until she just like suddenly gasps and she's like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, you know what? What's happening? What's going on? We're driving. I'm praying we're not about to get into an accident. And she's like, there's a picture of my grandma in the box. And I'm just like, oh, well, that would do it. That would make sense. And it's just those kinds of things that I'm like, oh, maybe I'm not as crazy as I think I am, because that's happened to me quite a few times. Hello. First thing I kind of want to say is just, you know, thank you to everyone that's followed me, and thank you for everyone that's left comments. This is the first time that I've really had any sort of like positivity from telling kind of my ghost stories. Just from my experience before, a lot of people have just kind of either told me, one, I was lying, or two, that I was crazy. But as I've mentioned before, I just moved to Florida from Las Vegas, and actually where my condo was, which I just sold it today, yay. My condo was maybe not even 2 miles away from the Zach Bagans Haunted Museum. Anytime that I would drive past that place, it just felt sticky. Like this giant black darkness would literally like find people and like hinge on, and it was just like tar. Like I would be driving through there and I would just feel like that energy would be stuck to me until I got so far away, and then it would kind of like let go. But you know me, I have to test out all of these things. So of course I did end up going to the Zach Bagans Museum twice. The first time I went with my then fiance, and then the second time I went with a friend. So the first time that I went, like immediately, it just was like this hive of just energy, and it felt very ominous and just feral. And the first thing I heard, I was like standing outside showing them that we had bought tickets, and I could just hear growling. So I'm standing in there with my, we'll call him Ted. And I'm standing in there and I'm just like, he is standing next to me, but I felt like something brush on my back. So at first I kind of just think, you know, like maybe he's like rubbing my back, something, you know, couples do in public when we were together. And then I look at him and it's like, no, he's got his phone in one hand and like the other's in his pocket. So clearly it's not him. So then I turn around, obviously, and I look to see if I'm like bumping into somebody because I don't want to be a heathen. And no, I'm not bumping into anyone. And the way that this thing, it was just literally like an 8-foot tall, like dark, like hooded, almost looking like mass. It almost felt like it was caressing me, like lovingly in a weird way. Like it just, I could feel it like purring. It was so strange. I'd just be like, hey, okay, that's enough. Like, please don't touch me. And I literally kind of said it out loud. I'm like, please don't touch me. And, you know, because I don't want to seem like a weirdo in public. But it listens and it kind of leaves me alone. But I still feel like this thing is just kind of like lurking around watching me. I don't know what it is at this point. So fast forward, we're going through all of the rooms. Like the Kevorkian room, they really crowd you in there, so it gets hot. But other than that, like I don't really feel a whole lot of sensation. More just like a pressure from like the Kevorkian van. I didn't go into the basement. The basement is something that I may never go into. Like, because by the time they walked me to the actual stairs for the basement, I was literally reeling. And I mean, I'm like rocking back and forth. Like that energy is so strong in that basement. I don't know. I think that's where they say that they've done satanic rituals or whatnot. But whatever is down there is demonic. But there are these levels I kind of talked about. There are these levels to the demons. And sometimes it has to deal with like, you know, how much power that they have. And sometimes it kind of has to deal with like how much intelligence that they have. But what you get in a fatal mix is something that's powerful and not intelligent. And that's what that thing feels like. It just feels wild. And that frightens me. And it's just this heavy feeling. Like again, I was literally rocking back and forth. Like I had to steady myself on the banister because I was just like, I'm going to fall. And I'm not someone who gets like easily sick or anything. Like at that time I'd already been living in Vegas for a while. So it wasn't like the desert heat or anything like that. It was those dang stairs. We also went into the Oddfellows room. And for whatever reason, when you have like the all access pass or whatever, you can crawl through this little hole. Why people want to crawl through the hole, I don't know. But for whatever reason, what was hanging out lurking in that hole was like manifesting itself as like a little boy, which to me is always like, don't imitate children. But people are still crawling through it. And even though I'm like looking at them like, don't do it. There's something in there. Don't do it. C'est la vie, I guess, right? So at this point, I still feel like something's lurking. I kind of keep catching that glimpse of the shadow out of the corner of my eye. They took us into, I can't remember, a couple different rooms. I just remember like being in the hallway by the stairs. Like they loop you back through it and then you come into the hallway by the stairs. And then they finally take you into the room where they have the Dybbuk box. Now let me tell you, I live under a rock. I don't do a lot of like social media. This is actually the most I've ever been on TikTok. I don't watch TV. So when they said that they had a Dybbuk box, like I knew what a Dybbuk box was. I understand what it means to like the Jewish faith and how it can trap and house demons and things like that. So I was kind of like, that's kind of rubbing me the wrong way. I'm a little skeeved out by that. But they take you in there, or at least at this time that I went, they take you in there and they start showing you the video of like Zach and Post Malone just hanging out, opening up the Dybbuk box, and then tell you about all of the horrible things that happened to Post Malone after. Oh, and then Post Malone and Zach, I guess, describe how the thing that came out of the Dybbuk box was just this really big, tall shadow. Remember what I saw when I first got there? So at that point, they give you the option to actually go look at the Dybbuk box, which is just an actual like wine box, I guess. It has like leaves and grapes on it. But I looked at my tour guide and I said, actually, I'm over. I'm done, because that's the figure that I was seeing. And I was like, I don't really want to go in there and look at it. And they're like, that's totally fine. You don't have to. So at that point, I will admit, like I let a little bit of fear come in. And I was like, ugh. Nope, don't, I'm done. So we're finishing up the tour. One of the points on the tour is you can go in and look at Peggy the doll, which I don't like dolls anyway. That's like my creepy factor. For some people it's clowns, for me it's dolls. So at that point I was kind of done. I was just like, I don't want to do any more. Like I don't have my guard up at this point. I'm trying to get that fear to go away. So as I'm standing waiting in the hall, I hear two other tour guides talking, because they'll switch off tour guides sometimes as you're walking through there. And I just walk up to these two tour guides whispering, and the one's like, someone saw that shadow thing. And the other one's like, oh my gosh, that's never good. And I looked at them, I was like, that was me, actually. You're talking about me. And they're like, oh. And then like walk off. And as I'm standing outside of the room for Peggy, there's like a curtain there for whatever reason. And some of the tour guides do wear like Victorian style dresses, because they're allowed to pretty much wear black dresses and stuff like that. But everything that they wear is black. So as I'm standing there, there's a couple other people waiting with me because they're not having it either. And then I just see like coming out of the wall, or maybe there was a room there, there's just this woman, fairly tall, maybe like 5'6", 5'7", dressed in, like a petticoat, like a dress with a petticoat. So it has a big full skirt. And it's like a pink skirt, and she has like these russet curls. And she just walks down between those curtains. So I don't know if that was like Peggy the doll spirit or whatnot. But soon after that, the tour was over. And I just remember, again, me with my dreams, having a dream that night. And that the shadow thing came to my door, and I was just like, please don't, like, I don't want any trouble, please leave me alone. And it literally said to me is that my power was a match for its own, and it recognizes that. And I went back a second time. I guess I'll go ahead and give one more story, because I'm thinking about this. I know I've been telling a lot of stories about my past, but I've not really told anything about what's happened to me recently. So I definitely don't live in any haunted houses anymore, but things still find me no matter where I go. Even, for example, when I moved to Las Vegas in my condo, it was me and, again, this fiance that I keep mentioning that is no longer around. We were sitting on the couch watching TV together, and our dog was laying on the floor with us, and all of a sudden the dog just jumps up out of nowhere and starts whimpering, almost like something had hurt him. And then, of course, like, I'm going to my dog, like, what the heck happened? What's wrong with you? Are you okay? And he just starts trembling. And then the TV shut off. And I was really pissed off, I'll be honest. So I immediately got up and I have a little cast iron cauldron that I burn my herbs in. So I got up and I got my cauldron and I immediately like started burning some eucalyptus and rosemary and cinnamon. And I chased whatever that thing was around. And again, it wasn't the condo. My condo itself was not haunted. It's just things find me and they come in, or I pick them up just in random places. Like, I don't even go to scary places all the time. Like, I can go to the grocery store and get weird vibes.
Tell me about the weirdest dream you've had that you don't actually think was a dream at all.
I mean, aside from the time that I had a full-on premonition in 4th grade about moving desks at school, let's talk about every time that I dream about my mother. You know, maybe it is intuition, maybe it's mental illness, but my mother passed away in 2016, and I do have dreams where she comes to me. Excuse my dog eating in the background. The first dream I ever had about my mother is when she passed away. She showed me the first people that she saw in heaven. My mother's biological father passed away when she was only 6 months old, and she was raised by a different man who she considered her father. And she showed me that she was so happy because the first person to greet her in heaven was my grandfather Earl, her second father. And then for the first time in her existence, she got to meet her actual biological father. And I'm going to say heaven loosely, it's just whatever afterlife that there is. The second time that I dreamt about my mother was essentially, it was very strange. We were at like, not a carnival, but it had like a carnival feel. There's a bunch of people gathered around, and I'm like looking for her in this crowd, and I finally find her. And then, you know, I'm like, hey, wait. And then a man comes up and he says, you can't talk to her right now, and kind of like takes her away from me. Fast forward a few months later, I'm dreaming again, and these dreams just feel so detailed, so lucid. I literally felt myself like leave my body, and the next thing I know, like I am in this city, and it's just like gold and grandeur, and there's like people all around, and I find my mother. And she is just telling me, she's like, you don't know what I did. I traded something for you. She's like, I had to give something up because I want you to have prosperity. Comes to find out that my mother had like some sort of investment that was worth $18,000 at the end of the day that came to me, not to mention the fact that I'm probably more financially secure than I've been in a long time. And money always seems to find me after I had that dream. But then after that was like that initial first year, I started doing something really stupid in my sleep that I wish that I didn't do. I'll have dreams of my mother, and it'll be like the most random things. Like we're hanging out, and I remember one time we're like hanging out in a pizza place, and it's just like this, there's this old place in my hometown called Pisanello's Pizza, and for whatever reason, we're hanging out at this old pizza place. Look how cute. Anyway, so we're hanging out at this pizza place, and I start going lucid, like I always do. And the joy that I feel, because my mother was my best friend, and like the joy that I feel when I have these dreams about her is immense. But I always go lucid, and I look at her and I say, this isn't real. You're dead. And every time that I do that, I just can see the sadness on her face. Because she just shakes her head, and then I usually end up waking up. Because I don't know why, like my logical brain just takes over, and I'm like, no, this moment isn't real because you're not really here. And it's like, it's heartbreaking because I feel like I'm hurting her feelings and my own. Oh, I'm crying. Let's not do that. While TikTok has my other video on a shadow ban, I just dropped in to say I have another ghost story today. I have many. This one today is going to be a little strange because I think it may have been my first encounter with a deity. Once upon a time, I was in Yellow Springs, Ohio, and if you're from that area, you know that there used to be an old abandoned power plant that they just demolished, I think, in like 2022 in the Glen Helen Nature Preserve. Back before I knew what trespassing was, or knew that I was trespassing, I took a stroll to go back and visit the remainder of the ruins that were there. And as I'm approaching, I am just getting this most awful feeling. It felt like I was not supposed to be there, that I was not wanted there. There was definitely some sort of angry energy there, in my personal opinion, just all around. Not a good guy. And in fact, if you've seen the graffiti of the gentleman with all of the upside down crosses, I quite wonder if that graffiti was not made in the image of this thing. But I decide that it's time to go. I don't want to be there. I don't want to mess with this. I don't like the energy that it's bringing. And also, too, that Antioch built that power plant in the old limestone quarry. So if you've heard of stone tape theory, I totally believe in that. I think it was just harnessing some sort of energy. Anyway, I take off to leave, and like as I'm leaving, like I feel this thing like rush at me. It's following, like it's chasing me out of there because it does not want me there at all. And it's autumn, so in autumn, the trees are pretty bare around that area, and I just see like a giant white deer fly through the air over top of me to like charge at that thing too, like almost in protection of me. Yes, I know what you're thinking. It sounds a lot like Harry Potter's Patronus. And that's exactly what I thought when I was experiencing this for myself. Like, what just happened? It literally was like a white stag. But later on, someone has told me that that is also the calling card of Artemis. She is the patron goddess of, like, I guess women and childbirth and protecting children. And that was her thing too. She works with animals and she was an archer. I'm not sure how I feel about deity work. Not that I'm judging anyone who does it, but I was raised, Christian. I was raised specifically Mormon. So I'm just like, I don't know. It's not something that I've really gotten myself into or felt comfortable doing. But is it possible? Like, is that a real thing? Maybe Artemis was like reaching out to me. I don't know. This is a weird video. This is a weird ghost story. So normally horror movies don't scare me. The only time that they scare me is when they emulate my real life experiences. And one such experience was portrayed in one of the Paranormal Activity movies. And I remember seeing that in theaters and just like getting chills. It's the scene where the mom is in the kitchen and she turns around and there's like a bed sheet just hovering and she thinks it's one of her kids, but like when she goes near it, it just collapses into the floor. So one time I was very sick at work. I had the flu or something and I ended up getting physically ill at work and I was just not feeling great. And it was closer to drive to my mom's apartment than it was to drive to mine. And I wasn't sure I was gonna make it. So I called my mom. I'm like, hey, I'm sick. Can I just come over? And of course my mom agreed. That's my mommy. So I stayed up with her for a while, watched TV, and then I just ended up getting super lethargic. I'm like, hey, can I go lay down? So I ended up falling asleep in her bed. When I woke up, it was dark and I jolted awake. And anytime that I jolt awake, it usually means something's around. Now, with this one, I kind of dismissed it. I was like, maybe I genuinely just had like a fever dream or something like that. Because when I'm sick enough to get fevers, I get really high fevers. And before I get any more whispering in my videos, my cat is eating right now. So if you hear any weird noise, my cat's just munching. Anyway, so I look to the left of the bed and there's a shape there, just a shape, and it's darker than the dark. If you know, you know. And as soon as I make direct eye contact with it, it just collapsed into the floor. And of course I immediately call for my mom, and my mom comes in and she's like, what's wrong? And I'm like, I saw something. But again, I dismissed it. I'm like, maybe this is just part of the fever. Fast forward a few weeks. The way that my mom's apartment was set up is once you come in through the foyer, the kitchen's to the left, the bathroom's directly across from that on the right, and then the bedroom is also on the right side, and then her living room area is past the kitchen. So I'm sitting in there watching TV, and she's cooking dinner for us, and I just feel my spidey senses go off, my hackles raise, the hair on my arm stands up, and out of my peripheral, I see something not walk, float out of her bedroom bathroom area, down the foyer, and then stop in the living room. I didn't say anything. I just kept watching TV like nothing happened. And not even a minute later, my mom came out of the kitchen and is standing in the living room like, did you just get up to go to the bathroom? And I was like, no. She's like, no, I swear I saw something or someone come out of the bathroom. And I just looked at her. I'm like, oh, you saw that too? I think my family has some sort of gift or something. Is it a gift? So when it comes to extrasensory perception, I feel like a lot of people talk about clairvoyance. That's kind of the more common word where you can see things, but there's also clairaudience. Then there are people who kind of are all broad spectrum and they're able to do all of these things. I would say that I'm probably one of those people, but I will tell you guys about the cowboy that I talked about in my other video, who was one of my clairaudient experiences. So I was always hip to his existence. I knew that he was there, but he never really left my dad's room. It would just be kind of a situation where I would be walking down the hall or walking in my bedroom, because my dad's bedroom was across the way. And I would look, and it would just be this older guy in like a floppy like hat, like a farmer's hat. And then he just was kind of like a baggy jacket, pants, just very, again, probably someone who worked the farm that all of that land was at one time. So the hallway and my dad's bedroom were carpeted with this hideous green carpet, and then my bedroom was the original hardwood floors. So there was definitely a difference in sound as you walk up the hall and then you walk into the hardwood. It's summertime, it's thundering and lightning, and Ohio gets some rockin' thunderstorms, so it took out the power. And my mom is actually with me. And as we know from my other story, my mom, she could see things too, but this was one experience that she didn't share with me, even though she was there. So we're hanging out in my bedroom, and because there's no power, she's like reading me books, and we're talking. Like, I'm a little kid. I'm like maybe 7 at this point in time. And I think she ended up falling asleep is what happened. But I was hanging out there, just kind of listening to the thunderstorm. It was to the point where it was just kind of like that rolling thunder. It was really relaxing. And then I start getting the ghost feeling, right? I get that pressure, kind of like that cold chill. My heart starts to pound a little bit. And I hear footsteps come out of my dad's room. Now, mind you, he's at work. That's why my mom's home. And the footsteps are soft on the carpet as they walk across the bedroom and the hallway. And then as soon as it gets into my room, it's like boot heels because of the hardwood, and it's like boot heels and spurs. And I wasn't scared. I wasn't afraid of this guy because it was a human spirit, so he didn't freak me out. But that was the only time he left my dad's bedroom and just like walked into the middle of my bedroom. Like, he would stop at like the foot of my bed, and I'm like, dude, what do you want? Like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? That was the only time.